Ladies and gentlemen, the impossible has been accomplished. 19 years of pain and agony. It's behind us now. Toronto Maple Leafs and the first round curse has been lifted. That and so much more on today's episode. Let's get right into it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am your co-host, Steele Roden, and your boy is back, Flip Livingstone, across the pond. He's joining us from all the way in Napoli. Beautiful trip so far, Flip. How's it going out there?
Steele, last night's victory from the Toronto Maple Leafs may have just put the cherry on my honeymoon.
Yes, sir.
And I think what I appreciate the most is, aside from you holding us down, and if you haven't checked out Steele's solo episodes, he's got you covered over the last couple of days. So make sure you hit the channel and subscribe. That was the cherry on top. And we're going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs, but much love for holding me down. The trip has been great. I'm almost back in the booth at home because you and I are just getting warmed up on this postseason coverage, starting with today's episode.
Yeah, I'm glad you're having a great and fantastic trip out there. I've seen a couple of your Instagram stories. It looks beautiful, magical time out there in Europe. But yeah, special episode today. We have a special guest joining us. He's been on the podcast many times. Blake Creamer, host of the Fantasy NHL Today podcast, Sports Ethos production. He will be joining us very soon. But there's a lot to talk about. It feels like deja vu for the Edmonton Oilers. They take down the LA Kings for the second straight year. A different tale for the Maple Leafs against the Tampa Bay Lightning this year. Around the curse has finally been lifted. The New York Rangers extended their series with a dominant performance in Game 6. But again, before we get to all of that, we will bring Blake Creamer on so we can talk about that Toronto Maple Leafs catching lightning in a bottle, winning Game 6 off the stick of Captain Johnny T. Let's get Blake right on here right now. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Here we are with Blake Creamer, host of the Fantasy NHL Today podcast, a Sports Ethos production. Blake, thank you so much for being able to join us today on episode. Flip, thank you so much. I know you're on vacation still, but being able to jump on after a big Toronto Maple Leafs win last night, moving on to the second round. I appreciate both of you being able to jump on for today's episode. Before we get into all the juicy topics for today, how's your NHL playoff bracket challenge looking? Because mine's completely busted right now. Islanders out, Minnesota out, Rangers almost out too. How's the playoff bracket looking?
Blake, go ahead, brother.
You took the Islanders, my guy. What the? Oh, Bo Horvat,
Islanders in
get
6.
the hell
Islanders
out of
in
my
6.
sight. No, all right, no, forget that. That man, yeah, he's dead to me. Yeah, I'm actually looking good. I'm looking good in the first bracket. I mean, I need New York. New York's got to take it. I need Colorado. So give me those, and then we're cooking. I basically took the safest bracket of all time. It's like, oh yeah, who's the top seed? Yeah, let's go there. Okay, that's nice. So
hey,
yeah, what about
unlike
you?
March Madness in the NCAA, though, the NHL usually tends to unfold a little bit more predictably. Aside from, I was in on the Islanders as well. My boy Ilya in Long Island, in my opinion, is on the cusp of being the best goaltender in the NHL, and I think we just saw potentially Andrei Vasilevsky showing that maybe he's taking a step back. So other than that bold prediction, I'm perfect right now throughout all my brackets. So, and honestly, all that matters to me right now is picking the teams that I think still have a shot at the cup. And the Oilers are still my bet. I know all three of us are going to talk a lot about that. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are alive, baby, and I cannot wait to get to that discussion. So, Steele, why don't you take us there?
They are alive and they are well. Maple Leaf fans across Canada, across the planet, all Maple Leaf fans are enjoying themselves for once after the first round. Maple Leafs win in Game 6
for
off
once.
The stick of Captain Johnny T. 2-1 overtime win. I was reading something last night that, back in 2016 when the Islanders beat the Florida Panthers, that it was Johnny T who won in overtime, 2-1 in overtime. And it was a 26-year drought for the Islanders to move on as well. And now off the stick again from Johnny T for 19-year drought for the Maple Leafs. So incredible job from the captain. But what an accomplishment. Something that hasn't been done for the Maple Leafs since 2004, 19 years. Blake, I want to start with you first. Have you watched any of the series? Have you been invested with the Leafs and Lightning? And if so, like, what's your overall takeaway, and what was your overall takeaways and X factors from that Maple Leafs team?
Yeah, no, I was invested for sure. Leafs are, as I get older, I just want Canadian teams to win. Like, let's get the cup back in here. Let's get the biz. To me, though, I like the players on this team too. Like, and I like a good story. Like 6 first-round exits. What the hell? Oh my God. So, to me, like, that reminds me very much of like the Canucks, before they made their run. And I have to throw the Canucks in here, by the way. I'm sorry.
Of course you do.
In 2011, right? They lost to Chicago, like, 2 rounds in a row. They were in their heads, and it was, they almost lost that game in Game 7. And then they flew to the finals, right? And that's where I see, I don't know, finals for Toronto. I would love to see it, but they're over the hump, right? This is a mental hurdle, and it's huge. Like, anyone who plays sports knows, like that, like, these guys are amazing players. There's no question. They're elite, but you got to win a freaking round. Okay. So now that they've done that, I love the Leafs to, like, and especially if Boston gets through, that was going to be a potential issue. They're going to Game 7 with Florida. So now there's a bit of a, if whoever makes it through there, I like the matchup a little better now, because I was like Boston, Toronto. I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be tough. But Boston's all of a sudden looking like a dumpster fire, defensively. So what the hell are we doing? So, anyways, I love it. I don't think the Leafs really they got outplayed. That's for sure. So in a couple of the games anyway. But Samsonov, I think that puts that to bed. This guy's a number 1. He's playing excellent. And I think they're over the mental hurdle. So I like
really good points, Blake. Yeah, and I appreciate that you are invested. And of course, you have to bring up those Vancouver Canucks, because that's what your heart is.
Yeah, come on.
Hey, that's what your heart is closest to, and I appreciate that. But here at the end of the day, and I have a few notes here, boys. I've been on the coast. I've been sitting here typing up, watching way too many highlights. I got the wife in my ear. She's a little upset, but that's okay, because she knows that we are dedicated to this content for the listeners of this podcast. And my bad for being a little bit in the wings. This has been 6,948 days exactly since the Toronto Maple Leafs have won a playoff series. And I've been counting, boys. Austin Matthews needed to step up, and he stepped up. You already mentioned Ilya Samsonov having to be that guy, and what a good time for him to show up in Game 6 with the best performance of his career. So we got to show some love, and I appreciate you, Blake, for bringing that up. The man has defined himself as a goalie that can get it done. Sheldon Keefe throws his lines into the grinder and comes up with a little bit of a special mix here. Do I think that's the recipe for success moving forward? I don't know, but I have a feeling we're going to talk about that in a second, because to me, I think Steele wants to talk about who we'd rather face as Toronto Maple Leafs fans.
Yeah.
If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. And in my opinion, if you're okay to get right there before I say this, Steele.
I wanted to say this real quick. Because there's a lot to talk about from that.
There is a lot to talk about.
And we can talk about, we could talk for an entire episode if we really wanted to, and highlight all the superstars like Matthews, Marner, who actually just like came out from the ground running and dominated the entire series. 5 goals, 9 points for Matthews, 11 points for Marner, Tavares, and Nylander. But there was just so many good players in this entire series. I really liked Ryan O'Reilly. Probably the best pickup at the NHL trade deadline. He was incredible in the faceoff circles when it truly mattered for a lot of those overtime wins and game-winning goals. I thought Morgan Riley was playing like a damn polar bear out there. He was vicious.
Riley was a standout for me.
He was insane. But on top of that, Matthew Knies was sensational. 20 years old in the first playoff experience. 5+ shots in 5 games, over 12 hits. He has 3 assists in 5 games, and he was on the ice for all 3 overtime game-winning goals. So for me, Matthew Knies is one of the highlights from this series, especially at 20 years old. He's getting 14, 15 minutes a night. He was sensational to me.
At the end
Love
of
it.
the day, though, realistically, yeah, kudos due to Matthew Nyes, kudos due to Sheldon Keefe for putting him in the mix. But I think one of the people that we're not talking about who has taken potentially the most heat is Kyle Dubas, who has put together this team now ready to go for a cup run. Hey,
Yes,
are they
sir.
going to go there? Maybe not. Are we going to predict that they go there? I'm not ready to do it just yet because I need to see what this Rangers team does. And I know we're going to
Yeah.
talk about that next. But to me, Steele, Blake, at the end of the day, I think Blake hit the nail on the head. This is a mental hurdle cleared for this Toronto Maple Leafs team. And now, in my opinion, and I've been hearing some of these comments, don't think that because I'm not on the pod and Steele's holding it down that I'm not reading the comments. We aren't homers here. We are very, very clear about the quality of this Toronto Maple Leafs team. And now that that mental hurdle is cleared, the sky is the limit for this Toronto Maple Leafs team. And I don't care what anybody says. And if the Florida Panthers can dust aside these Boston Bruins in 7 games, which will be crazy, the Toronto Maple Leafs have just as good a shot as any team in the NHL. And I'm not ready to hear any other argument against it because of the quality of the lineup that they have.
And that's exactly where I want to go next with this conversation. Maple Leafs, they're now in the second round. They await their opponent in the second round, either the Boston Bruins or the Florida Panthers. I never thought that we would be in this position. I never thought the Boston Bruins would be going to a Game 7 with the Florida Panthers. But what do you know? Sergei Bobrovsky comes in. He plays okay. Matthew Tkachuk, dominant performance again in Game 5 and Game 6. Blake, you know, you're talking about the mental hurdle of getting over that first round. But what happens if you go up against the Boston Bruins in the second round? Is that another mental hurdle that the Maple Leafs have to climb over? Or is it just because now they're out of the first round, they got over that, they're confident, they're buzzing, even it doesn't matter who they face? Would you rather face Boston or would you rather face Florida?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious answer is you don't want to face the Bruins in there, right? That's the best team, best regular season team of all time. So, but that said, I mean, what are they doing? 7-5. What the hell is that?
Hallmark is shaky right now.
Yeah. So to me, I mean, that said too, like they still got Swayman in the mix here, but that's a weakness right there. That's a weakness exposed at a horrible time for the Bruins, right? So now it's Game 7. It doesn't matter if they're the better team. That, you know, Bobrovsky. That's how I like to say Bobrovsky's name. He sounds to me like a detective from like the 90s or something. Like, hey, Bobrovsky, what are you doing? You forgot to fill out the paperwork, Bobrovsky. But you know, like whatever. The guy won a Vezina. They might be able to win that game. It doesn't, you know, now it's up in the air. So if obviously I'd rather face Florida, but I think if Florida wins this, they're going to get demoed by the Leafs. The Leafs are on one, like in my opinion, like just because of that mental hurdle, right? So that weight's off the shoulder, like, and also the Leafs, like not just Ryan O'Reilly to me, but I wanted to mention like Noel Ashari, like Jake McCabe. This guy played 27 minutes the other night. You know, he's a beefer out there. He hit, you know, 7 hits. Luke Shen, like these are playoff type players, right? And so the Leafs are built for that. And now their goaltending is solid, which it actually was for most of the series, right? So
yes,
I do like that. But yeah, I mean, if they face Boston, I just think it's a little bit of a weaker Boston mentally, potentially. And that's what I look at in the playoffs. Like you can look at all the stats everywhere, but it's about the mental game, you know, and like the Boston Bruins, they're best players. This is the last shot for them, really, right? You know, like Bergeron's probably going to retire. So I don't know. They might be feeling a little pressure. And now they're Game 7 against Florida. No one saw that coming. So I don't know. Also, Matty Tkachuk, what a freaking beaut. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, to bring it back to the fantasy side, Matthew Tkachuk has got to be right there in the first round of every, you know, to me.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from Brady Tkachuk, you know, I think you could, if somehow you could get Brady and Matthew Tkachuk on your team next season, which obviously would be a very tall ask, you might have to be shifting assets in the dynasty keeper realm to try and get those two guys on your team. But if you can somehow, my goodness. But to wrap this up, Steele, if you're okay with it, and I know you're leading the show today, which I appreciate. I actually like you leading the show. We might have to do this a little bit more. The Florida Panthers lost 3 out of 4 games to the Toronto Maple Leafs this season while allowing 15 goals across those meetings. As for the Bruins, The Leafs only managed 8 goals against the Bruins while losing 3 of 4. So I got to agree with Blake, but I will throw this caveat at you. That mental hurdle, and I don't mean to sound like a played-out record, that goes so heavily in the advantage of the Boston Bruins. If they do manage to squeak through here, I am just so excited for round 2 because I really do think the winner of the next series, even if it is Florida, they might be the winner of that Eastern Conference because Florida's on a heater now. And I think Blake alluded to it. That confidence, especially if they slay the beast of Boston, they believe they can beat any team in the NHL. So that's something that you can't not ignore. Steele, where do you want to take us next? Are we going to break? Are you reading ad reads? Who's reading ad reads?
Yes,
We're
sir.
all over the place.
Sir. Look,
Get
New York
that
Rangers,
money.
they extend their series to Game 7 against the Devils. That's coming up next, along with the Edmonton Oilers. Moving on to the second round as well. But first, of course, we got to pay these bills over here. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check mark to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop on eBay Motors, and with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Make sure you're checking out Blake Creamer's podcast as well, Fantasy NHL Today. Blake as well on Twitter, Blake Creamer SE. Make sure you go follow him. Get the biz every single day.
Solid follow, Blake.
You've been
crushing it, my man.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying.
Yes, sir.
I'm doing my best.
You're doing a great job out there. Get the biz every single day. We will get to that New York Rangers series. They extend their series to Game 7 against the Devils. Never thought that would happen as well. I'm a little bit shaky for Game 7 with the blue and white over there. But the Edmonton Oilers, they're the king of the hill in round 1 against the LA Kings, defeating the Kings in round 1 for the second straight season. And really what I want to ask off the bat is, was this too much for the LA Kings because of the offensive ability of, Draisaitl and McDavid? Or is there still something missing for the LA Kings that they need to address in the offseason?
Blake, if you're okay, I'm going to take this one just because I've been away for a couple of days and I need to just
He's been waiting for this question.
He's had a few Peronis. Yeah, he's good to go.
I got to spout off at the mouth here because I think Steele knows better than most that I've been saying throw $20 or $30 on the Edmonton Oilers to win the cup. What I've been saying this, Steele, now 2 years I've been saying. Last year it wasn't right. This year it feels right. And I actually don't mind starting with the Kings because shout out to guys like Adrian Kempe, Ons Kopitar, who are, Adrian Kempe, make sure he's at the top of your list next season for fantasy drafts, number 1. He's got legitimate 40-goal potential. Ons Kopitar, hats off to one of the classiest and solid player over the last couple of decades, and he's got the cup ring to prove it. But I got to say this. The Edmonton Oilers' offensive output was clearly too much to handle still. Yeah. And the Kings are right there for me. They're right there on the cusp, and I don't think they're going anywhere in that Pacific Division. They're going to be hanging around, and look, they went for their guy in Korpisalo, and he just wasn't good enough, in my opinion, because, look, the Kings held the Oilers to only 45 shots combined over the first 2 games, and an .892 save percentage and a .377 goals against. For me, it's just not going to cut it, and I understand you're going up against Leon and Connor. But my last caveat, Evan Bouchard should also have moved right into the top of your options for offensive defensemen for next year's draft. And he has been sensational, logging almost 24 minutes a night. The Edmonton Oilers now, if they can catch a bit of goaltending, it's the same narrative, boys. If they can catch a bit of goaltending, Stuart Skinner's got to be better. They're going to have to be better defensively. But oh my goodness, offensively, just too much to handle for the LA Kings. And this is a really good LA Kings team. So I think the rest of the league needs to be on notice, because also Connor McDavid hasn't even kicked it into McJesus gear yet. And that's another caveat that the rest of the league needs to pay attention to.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with most of that there, Flip.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, the one part I don't think Korpisalo was weak, honestly.
I agree with that. I don't think he was weak.
The numbers would disagree with both of you boys, because his shot total 45 over the first 2 games. You can't allow that many goals.
Well, I'll tell you what I mean, Flip. So
you go first.
It's honestly like the power play. Right. I mean, you put Edmonton on the power play, right? They scored 9 power play goals in this series, right? It's a different ball game on the power play. Obviously, you want your goalie to make these game-saving saves, but when Edmonton is converting at that rate, like I just feel like you can't really put that on the goalie per se. Like the chances are insane. These are beyond elite players. Like, I think Korpisalo, to me, is a great addition to LA, and I think he solidified himself as kind of their number one moving forward. I loved the trade when it happened.
Well, when Phoenix Copley's your other option, he is the number one. Also, holding your team to 45 shots over 2 games, that's on the goalie. The team has done their job, boys. You got to take a look at that.
I hear what you're saying for sure. To me, I think like what I do agree is that the LA Kings are right there. I think they just ran into they ran into a juggernaut offensive team. And these guys performed, So, and what I like about the Oilers too is they had guys like Connor McDavid had an interview the other day, just saying like, it's other guys too, right? It's not just a 3-man team here. Like we got guys stepping up, like Klim Kostin. What the hell? The guy played 9 minutes. He played unbelievable 9 minutes. Guys like Warren Foegele, right? Nick Bjugstad. These guys are contributing, right? And then Matthias Ekholm. Like, what happened to the Oilers when he joined them? They finally learned how to play, they got a defensive defenseman in there who can actually get the biz, So my issue with the Oilers though is Stuart Skinner and their goaltending. Like you said, Flip, like that's the only potential problem moving forward, right? Because Skinner looked shaky to me. He looked shakier to me than Korpisalo, honestly. So the Oilers just rocked him.
Hey, Korpisalo makes 2 or 3 big saves. This series is different, boys. That's all I'm saying.
For sure.
They made a deal and sold off good assets to bring in their guy. They made him their guy. That's disappointing on Korpisalo, straight up and down.
I honestly completely agree with Blake's take on this, because I agree with your original take here that they're right there and they don't have to change anything in the offseason. And this is going to be a team for a long time that is going to be a legitimate threat. But I didn't think that Korpisalo was weak whatsoever, because you look at the first 3 games of the series, he had a .932 save percentage in those first 3 games, and they were up 2-1. And the longer the series went on, it got more overwhelming for him because of how insane that offensive group with McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Evan Bouchard stepping out in the postseason now too. So I think as the further the series went on, it just got more difficult and more overwhelming for Korpisalo, because those first 3 games he had a .930 save percent. Even now, first three
goals on 45 shots, boys. That's not good enough. I don't care what team you're going up against.
That's
guys.
fine.
Look at the numbers. That's not fine. 45 shots, your team limits the best offensive team in the league to 45 shots.
Wait a second.
Look at those numbers, Steele. Come on. I've been away too long. I got to keep you reined in here.
Look at these numbers. 19 goals against for Stuart Skinner and an .884 save percentage. He has a worse save percentage than Korpisalo.
The reason they lost was their goalie.
I truly don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't agree with that take. I don't think it was the goalie. I think it was the overwhelming ability of McDavid and Draisaitl in their power play. They had a near 60% power play.
McDavid wasn't even nearly as good as he usually is. But okay, let's move on.
We'll move on. We'll move on to that.
It's getting salty. Getting salty,
boys.
A
little salty here. We're gonna move on though. We will get to the Winnipeg Jets. Rick Bowness's comments at the end of this episode. That is very salty. Yeah, very salty from him and his team or his players. But the New York Rangers extend their series to Game 7 back in Newark, actually, in New Jersey. To me, we talk about the Bruins going to 7 games. I think I'm more shocked at this going 7 games, because I thought the Rangers, and this, again, Flip knows me, like I am very high on this New York Rangers club. They're my pick to win the Stanley Cup. I thought they were just going to dust the Devils aside. They didn't have the playoff experience. It looked that way with Vitek Vanacek in the net, but now Akira Schmid comes in, and the guy's an absolute legend. He's out there playing like he's a top 3 goaltender in the league, and it's insane. But for me, the biggest disappointment so far has been Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin. Besides Game 6, they haven't been there the entire series. But that's what I want to ask you guys. What's more surprising, the Devils winning 3 straight and going the distance with the Rangers, or the lack of production from the Rangers' 2 best players?
Take it away, Blake. I took the last one, and clearly I'm a bit heated here, so I think you should take this one away if you're good with that,
he's a couple Peronis deep, and honestly, I'm a little bit jealous, actually. That's fine. It's morning here in the Pacific, so whatever. Anywho, yeah, I'm not surprised by this at all. Like, I did call for the Rangers to win, but this is the Devils are a good team. They're a very good team, and they had a better record in the regular season, right? So they've got a lot of weapons. They brought in Timo Meier here, which hasn't exactly worked out. But yeah, I still like the Rangers. It's an offensive issue, right? Like the whole series, but I do like your point about Mika Zibanejad, the guy, thank you, buddy, for showing up. I really appreciate that. But what about, guys like Chris Kreider, Adam Fox, and obviously Shesterkin, right? These guys, they're like, I think when you have a goalie like Shesterkin and he's playing the way he is, I think I still like. Oh, this is tough. Yeah, because now it's Game 7 in New Jersey, right? No,
come out with it.
You got to take I'm taking the Rangers, but on the road, Game 7, just due to the first off, they've been there, or they have a team that's a bit more cohesive than the Devils. Like the Devils, this is their first year. The year before, the Devils were in the bottom half of the league, bottom third of the league, and then all of a sudden they rocked it up here. So they're still trying to figure out how to be this type of team, right? And they're all young guys. They haven't really been there before. Their goaltending is whatever. Like Akira Schmid, buddy, he's going on the all-name team. All right, I love that name, Akira Schmid. But like, obviously you can catch lightning in a bottle with these guys, but you can't rely on it. Shesterkin, you can rely on that. All right, this guy's killing it. And also, the reason I like the Rangers too, New Jersey, they're the lowest scoring team in the playoffs. What the hell? They were in the top 10 of the league. They're the lowest scoring team, 13 goals. That's crazy. So, you go ahead, Flip. Yeah, what do you got?
No, I just appreciate you coming on this show, Blake, because you come with those proper takes and you come with the stats. Because right at the top of my notes, if Eric Holla is leading your team in scoring with 5 points and you're headed into a Game 7, I don't think we need to take this much farther, especially when you already highlighted their inability to score goals. And you got Dawson Mercer, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, even Dougie Hamilton, and other guys who have having great seasons. Eric Holla is leading your team in scoring going into Game 7 with 5 points. That's going to be a concern. And I don't mind keeping this simple, boys, because I am so on Steele's side when it comes to this Rangers team's ability to get it done. And it's very interesting that you mentioned the chemistry, that jive that the team doesn't have or does have. And at this time of season, obviously it's critical. So many new faces in New York. Kane and Tarasenko coming in at the deadline. And I think that's what you're seeing a little bit, because when the Rangers play their game in this series, games 1, 2, and 6, that's a combined score of 15-4 for the Rangers. And when they play their game, it's clear that they can take it to this team. And I think you made the clear points of why. So I'm not going to get into that. And I want to throw it back over to Steele for his take, because I know he's ready and raring. But the power play needs to be better for me for the Rangers. And registering only 30-plus shots one time. So they're finishing with under 30 shots on net every single game. And you got Schmid, who's been great. And you've got Vanacek. Steele said, I think you got to go quantity over quality here. Throw that biscuit on net, boys. I really do think if the Rangers got more shots on net, we'd be looking at a different story. I still have Rangers taking the game in Game 7. But Steele, what are you thinking here? Because to me, the clear and the Rangers, again, on the cusp. Kings, Devils, going to be here for a very long time, just not there yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I also have, I had Rangers in 6, but now that it's going 7, I've got Rangers in 7. But for me, and that's the thing. It's great when you're able to get the depth scoring. And, even though Chris Kreider and Patrick Kane aren't on the depth chart, bottom 6 group, they're still in the top 6. They're still producing, which is great. And that's what they were able to do in the first 2 games on the road. But when you go back to home and you're losing games 2-1 in overtime or 3-1 with an empty netter, and you're getting 0 production out of your 2 best goal scorers, or best goal scorer and playmaker in Zibanejad and Panarin, it's a recipe for failure, in my opinion. And that's what happened. The Devils won 3 straight games off the back of Akira Schmid just playing his lights out, like a brick wall out there. So for me, I was more disappointed in the Rangers' lack of production from their top group.
Hey, and this is the thing. I think I kind of was a little bit, your question posed to me off air. Very good one, Steele. Are you more impressed with the Devils? Are you disappointed with the Rangers? I'm kind of in the middle because, like I said, when they do play their game, the Rangers have dusted aside the Devils. And I'll leave it at this before I think we're just going to get a little shout out to the Locked On Network, and then we're going to end the show talking about these Winnipeg Jets. Is before that blow up in Game 6, I got to show some love to, I agree fully, Blake, all-name team, Akira Schmid.
Akira Schmid, yeah.
5 goals in Game 6. Okay, ugly. But before that, in his 3 games, 0.63 goals against and a 976 save percentage. He saved this team's whole season. And I think he deserves a little bit of love. I don't know what that means going into next season, because also I think we can all agree Vitek Vanacek has not established himself as a pure, surefire number 1. So there's a lot, I think, maybe
he
going
might get a
on
look
in New Jersey.
Yeah.
He will for sure get a look. I'm pretty sure Mackenzie Blackwood's out the door next season, so it's going to be a rotation of Schmid and Vitek Vanacek moving forward. Schmid.
Hey, I
absolutely
loving this conversation, boys. Maybe it's because I'm on a few birras over here on the Amalfi Coast, but I got to just show love to all the listeners out there, all the supporters of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. This is part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. And shout out to the everydayers who listen to us and make us their first listen every single day. Tomorrow on this episode, Steele's going to be bringing that fire. And all those second round previews, we might have Blake back this week because he's bringing that fire as well. I'm just hyped to be here, boys. I want to throw it back to Steele, though, because he's leading the way today. Steele, Richie Bones Bowness. I'm excited to hear the take from both of you guys. Vegas goes on. Winnipeg disappoints. What are your takes on this situation and his comments?
I absolutely love it. And I just want to give the gist out there of what he said. He walks into the press conference. He's like, let's make this short and sweet. I'm disappointed. I'm disgusted with my team's lack of pushback in this series. Basically what he's been seeing since February. And for me personally, I love this from Rick Bowness. This is what a lot of coaches need to start doing, expressing themselves, not behind closed doors. If you feel that way with your team and your club, make sure the press knows it too. Make sure it gets out there. I love the way he handled it. I actually don't like the way the players handled it at their end of the year press conference when they were like, oh, I wish he would have spoke to us behind closed doors. I bet you he spoke to you guys behind closed doors for 4 months back in February. From February up to this point, he was probably on you guys about playing with edge, playing with pushback. And I love this from him. He made it short and sweet. He got to the point, very blunt with his opinion. And I love that emotion just going into a press conference. I understand it's in the heat of the moment right after the game. And he did come out and say maybe he should have chose his words a little bit more carefully. I don't think he should have. I don't think he has any reason to apologize. And he didn't even apologize. He literally said that I will not stand for that type of play in a game like that, in a series like this. So I love what Rick Bowness did after that series.
I have a feeling Blake might disagree with both Steele and I, and that's why I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Are you reading? I got no poker face over here.
No,
Steele, what the hell? No.
Look, here. Ricky Bones Bowness has been behind an NHL bench for 35 years. I'm 34 years old. So in my opinion, if there's anyone in the NHL as a bench boss who can call out his team come on, guys.
Has he won any cups?
Has
he won any cups?
Does that really matter, though, in terms of calling out your team when they play like that?
No, but look at his performance resume. Any cups there on there, Ricky Bones?
Look. Agreed. But why don't you talk about a second what the Winnipeg Jets just did against a very winnable series against a Vegas Golden Knight team that had Laurent Bossard in net? And when Blake Wheeler comes out, a guy who's been stripped of his C, not by Rick Bowness, but who has done so over the last couple of years. Here's my thing, and I'll leave it at this because I can tell Blake's coming in with this fire. They didn't play well
over here, damn it.
No, they didn't play well. And Connor Hellebuyck, everyone's talking about, Jets steal a series, Jets coming in on a heater, Jets coming in. Connor Hellebuyck faced way too many pucks. And Steele has my back on this because right before the playoffs started, I said, is anyone paying attention to how many games and minutes this man has had to log to carry the team? And no one was saying diddly poo about that. And now look at what happened. And in my opinion, here's the thing. At the end of the day, I actually kind of hear what Blake Wheeler is saying. If the coach didn't come out and say anything in the room and then he calls them out, that's total BS. You know he said it in the locker room. He said it for months on end. There was no pushback, boys. So that's, to me, your team not performing, your coach's job is to call you out. Wake up and play better. You don't get called out. It's as simple as that for me. Also, check the ticker. 4-1 Vegas Golden Knights. No pushback, boys. See you later. Good luck on the links.
Yeah, no, I hear your point. So one thing I want to make clear is that I definitely agree that Winnipeg played like total garbage. I mean, it's not acceptable, right? You're in the playoffs. They played terrible. There's no question there. My issue is airing that in the public. I do not agree with that. I think, like, just in my own experience, like, put yourself in the player's shoes. You've sacrificed your entire life. You went to the morning practices. Your mom, got you the hand-me-down whatever's, skates, and so you could actually go out. And these guys have been doing it forever. And now they're in the league, the best league in the world. And you got Dingus McGee up here being like, I'm disgusted. That's not
Dingus McGee, though. He's 35 years in the NHL, Blake. This isn't
with
me
no
calling
cups.
out the team.
No, not you.
That doesn't matter.
That Bowness is Dingus McGee. You're a legend. What are you talking about?
There is not one person in the NHL realm that would ever call Rick Bowness Dingus McGee, so you better be careful because I know you hit 5,000 downloads, but you might be struggling to hit 10K if you're calling Rick Bowness.
I don't want to get Rick Bowness mad at me, right? So maybe I'll walk that back a little bit.
Better.
We'll just keep him, just Dingus, not McGee.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. But to me, I think you get more. This might sound fluffy, but you get more out of being positive than you do being negative, right? Picture you're in that room. To me, like, not that he shouldn't be negative to them, right? Everything he said, say it to them. Why the hell are you saying it out in the public? But have you, like, this is something I see too with these coaches and stuff. You hear players and coaches when they go into it, and it's always a surprise. They're like, well, the coach never told me anything. And I'm not saying Rick Bowness didn't talk to his team, but there are, like, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And I don't think it's as simple as being like, come on, guys, pull up your socks. Like, these guys are trying. They're busting their asses, right? And he's coming out here saying he's disgusted. That's an insult. That I'm getting heated. But
did Mark Scheifele have 1 point? 1 point?
Hey, remember what I clarified.
To me, that's not trying, bud. I'm sorry. That's not nearly good enough.
Here's the thing. Here's my take on this is that even if Rick Bowness didn't come out to the public and say that, everyone else is saying that. So it's not like it was just him. Like, there's us saying it right now.
But he's a coach. He's a professional, right?
Exactly.
Be a professional. Don't be like a kid.
No, he didn't say he addressed it like an adult. I understand the emotions are high. It's right after the game, but he said everything that was as clear as day and what went wrong with this team. When you look back to January and February, when Winnipeg was actually top of the Central Division, Central Division, and that's he's like, look back to February. We needed more pushback then. We were fighting for the top position, and next thing you know, they barely make it in the playoffs by 1 point. They had no pushback then. They didn't have any pushback now, and I completely get it. You lose Josh Morrissey in Game 2. You lose Mark Scheifele in Game 4. You're without already Cole Perfetti. I believe they were missing one other guy. Flip makes a spectacular point in how many minutes and shots that Connor Hellebuyck played. And even, I don't know if you guys saw what Connor Hellebuyck, we'll wrap this up very quickly, but I don't know if you saw what Connor Hellebuyck posted the other day as well, right after the series. He's like, I had more fun in those 5 games than I had all season long. I play this game to compete. I've got 1 year left on my contract. I want to compete every single year, and I had way more fun in those 5 games, even though that we lost. Way more fun. So, you know what? We're at an impasse right now. I appreciate everyone's opinions, though. And that's the thing. You know, it goes either way. I love the emotion. Some people don't like that emotion, and they like to keep it in-house and in the dressing room.
Good point.
And I understand that too. But I think at some point, you have to be disgusted with the Winnipeg Jets because they're almost like the Maple Leafs. Not anymore, because if you look back to the last 6-7 years, the Winnipeg Jets haven't got out of the first round either. I think they got out of the first round one time. So if you look at it that way, yeah, at some point you gotta get under your player's skin a little bit, even if it might come out the wrong way.
And if it's here, and if you guys are okay with it, and because I actually do see where you're coming from, Blake. At the end of the day, this isn't a 6-year, 7-year coach. I don't care if he has no rings. There's no one better suited to call out his team for a bad performance. And let's be clear, this isn't like borderline okay, we're unsure about the performance. They were straight Garbajosa. So let's just be real about this situation. And I'm here for you, Blake. I'm here for you take really that behind closed doors. That's what sports is. And you address your team. But like he said, I've been saying it since January. No pushback. So that's where I'm not here for Blake Wheeler's comment saying he should have addressed it. Mans have been addressing it. And if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, something tells me you're siding with the coach here, because at the end of the day, it's not his fault that this team so vastly underperformed, in my opinion, which is, imposed by a couple of Italian wobbly pops here.
Love that.
But the second round is upon us, and Steele and I will be back for tomorrow's episode to break down and predict all of those series.
Yeah, and before we wrap everything up, 2 games on the docket for tonight. The Boston Bruins in Game 7 against the Florida Panthers. The Colorado Avalanche in Game 7 with the Seattle Kraken as well. Both did not see him going the distance. Before we wrap up, real quick, I want one bet from each of you. Blake, I know you don't bet, but give me a bet anyways. From those 2 games, give me something. Who do you got?
All right, give me a Cale Makar goal in the Colorado Avalanche.
Ooh, that would be a stinger.
Boom, let's go.
I'm going back to the well for my boy Steele. Mikko Rantanen anytime goal. That's not a bold prediction. The man's been one of the only reasons that the Colorado Avalanche have been able to hang around all season long with all of these injuries. I think you and I need to talk about this Nishushkin situation maybe tomorrow, Steele.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, give me Mikko Rantanen anytime goal, because this Colorado Avalanche team has been very resilient, and it's because of Mikko Rantanen.
If I wasn't going with anytime goal from David Pastrnak, Mikko Rantanen would be my guy. But David Pastrnak, one of the best goal scorers right now, he's going to light it up in Game 7 tonight against the Florida Panthers. And thank you guys so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in for the remainder of the week. Second round preview predictions are coming up all week long. Blake, if you've got the time, we would love to have you back later this week as well.
Any time, boys.
Appreciate it so much. And thank you guys for tuning in to this episode with Flip and I and our special guest, Blake. Have a great day out there. Good luck with all your bets. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Go Leafs, go.